Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another very exciting interview in the Future Proof Your Law Firm group. Today, I am very excited to be having Erin Morse here today. Erin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to be talking with you. I know you're doing a couple of really cool things, specifically with your podcast, which we'll get into later. But why don't you start off with just a little bit of a brief introduction on who you are, a little bit about your law firm, kind of where you got to where you are today.
So my name is Erin Morse. I'm primarily a family law attorney in Orlando, Florida. And I am the owner of my law firm. I have other attorneys within my firm. I do have staff within my firm. And I got my start pretty quickly after I graduated law school, because I was fortunate that before I became an attorney, I did work as a paralegal and a law clerk in law firms. So by the time I became an attorney, I already had 9 years in the industry. So, and I had the opportunity to go to court with the attorneys for which I worked. So I had a little bit of that background, and I've always had somehow a pretty good business background, because it's really important when you're running a law firm to not view yourself like a law firm, like a lawyer does, right? So you have to unlawyer the business side of your law firm.
Yeah.
And make sure that you see it for the customer service based, business that it is, and not just I will law and they will come. So
definitely. Yeah. And that's one of the main things we talk about a lot in this group, is talking about, a lot of lawyers, all they want to do is just the law side of things. But if you're trying to run your own practice, that unfortunately isn't everything that you can do. I mean, you can hire out people, but you're going to have to make some decisions for sure. And I would love to talk with you about some of that. So one thing I want to talk about specifically is how you guys were able to kind of survive and possibly grow during this last, year through COVID. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of maybe the challenges you guys faced, how you overcame them, and then maybe still some things that are going on right now for you guys.
So the challenges that we faced during COVID and during lockdown, in my opinion, from the way that I had set my firm up from the beginning, from what I've seen from my colleagues, probably a little less challenging for us. First of all, I established my firm with a pretty tech savvy strategy. My expectation is that there should be no pieces of paper that exist in my office that aren't digitally backed up. So if every piece of paper in my office were to light on fire, I would lose nothing.
Yeah.
So when we were all working from home, I had also, we're cloud-based for that reason. And all of my staff was already set up with laptops. So when it came to that front, once the decision was made that we're all going to enter into lockdown and work from home, I told everybody, don't forget your chargers. See you soon. So, that made us pretty fortunate, because we were one of the few firms that could just seamlessly continue to practice in the same way. Because again, we keep everything virtual, including our capabilities of having clients sign documents virtually. I already had that technology. I already utilized it because it was efficient for us even before the pandemic. It was efficient for us to say to our clients, hey, fill out this form that we've emailed to you, and you can get it done and get it back to us, from your phone. I put that efficiency because it worked for me beforehand and I wasn't forced into it by COVID. So the thing that ended up being more challenging is like the lawyer side of it, was making sure that we find a way to facilitate hearings and ensuring that our clients had the ability to comply with appearing virtually. So some of the concerns were, did you download the Zoom app? Does it work? Do you want to go through a test run with us? Mm-hmm. Those were some of the challenges that we had once things were happening virtually. One of the difficulties and in the practice, I think, was that the courthouse just completely shut down and everything closed. So that was very frustrating for clients, but we were still able to provide service. Mediations could kind of roll through a little bit more because they're private in nature and not scheduled with the judges. So there was some balancing. Yeah. And one of the other big differences was having consultations, or the first time a client has the opportunity to meet with, or that first touch with our firm, now had to be virtual or over the phone, which we've found now is a much better benefit to everybody. I actually don't think I'll move out of having virtual consultations, because that seemed to be very time efficient for everybody involved.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I think one word you just said there is efficiency. I think, people might be scared to transition into, doing things more virtually. But I think as more and more people do it, they'll see that that is one thing that technology can really bring to a law firm, is better efficiency for a lot of different things. And I'm glad to hear you guys were able to make that shift easier. That's great. Like I mentioned before, it seems like you guys are doing some more kind of forward thinking stuff. That's awesome. So why don't you briefly talk about maybe some of the technology that you're using that you would recommend maybe other law firms use, or just stuff that's very beneficial for you guys. That's like, hey, if you're struggling with this particular thing, this is something you need to check out.
Yeah. So some of the technology that we use that works really well is we use Dropbox, of course. It's a cloud-based system. I can't stress enough that you should, with certain things, that you should just make the cost and make it a priority. I have an IT professional. So my IT professional actually makes sure to set all these up and make sure that all of our laptops and all of the documents are, and everything is encrypted. So they handle that side of it, because that's not where I'm an expert. So that's probably one of the bigger business advice that I can give. If it's not something you're an expert in, don't mess with it, right? Get the expert involved, have them provide the service, because that's, again, that even though there's a cost attached to it, it is time efficient in getting it right. So I have an IT person, and then we also utilize Clio, which is our firm management system. So that manages our calendar, our billing, and it has some secondary document management and storage in the cloud. And we have a voice over IP. So this voice over IP makes it so everybody, if you download the app and you have the correct login, all of our staff could work from home seamlessly. And you can call clients from your cell phone, right? Because as law firm owners, you don't want them to have your cell phone number. So if your clients have your cell phone number, change that. And you can call from the firm line, and you don't have to worry about that. One other thing we have that I find an incredible benefit is ZipWhip, which allows our firm line to be a text messaging service. So if I'm in court, I can message a client, because we all have these moments in a hearing where your client is not there, but you are, and everybody's ready for the hearing, right? So I can text message my client and say, where are you? The court has called our case. And they can respond very quickly from their cell phone. Again, it's the firm line. So there's this separation. They don't have my cell phone number. Mm-hmm. And it's also something that all of my staff, because delegation is important when you run a business, all of my staff can see the text messages and also respond to them if I'm not able to. So it puts everybody also on the same page. Everyone can see what these text messages were, and my staff could pick up where I left off if need be.
Oh yeah, no, I've actually had a couple lawyers mention ZipWhip before, so it definitely seems like something that is a cool tool that can be very useful. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate all of those. Now moving over again to some other kind of forward-thinking things that you guys are doing. Why don't you talk to us a little bit more about your podcast you have and the other kind of marketing efforts that you guys are putting into place? Because I know that's something, again, speaking from a business side, a lot of lawyers don't realize, referrals are all that I need. But in reality, it's important to have other marketing sources for whatever reason, if the referrals aren't consistent enough or whatever.
So for me, I think this is another example of something that I know is imperative that I delegate. I'm not a marketing specialist. I went to law school. I'm good with business, but I know where I have my limitations. So I actually have an in-house person, and you have the opportunity to deal with him. As soon as someone reaches out to me on anything that's, marketing or something like that, I'm like, ooh, you got to take this to Patricio. He manages my calendar. He'll put it on there. Because I know every time that I step into that arena and I kind of step out in a way that is outside of my expertise,
Mhm.
I messed it up. And he's like, no, I had this here. Why didn't you tell me? I want to use this. I want this. So he always has his strategies for how he makes sure that we maximize our marketing efforts.
Oh, sure.
So his name is Patricio. He's wonderful. He is in-house. He was a paralegal. And one of the things that he brought to my attention was, hey, you know, I think there's a market that you can corner based on you, your personality, how you handle the practice of family law, because it can be its own beast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we could really corner this market on a female-run law firm in family law, especially, and you should have a podcast on it. So he makes sure that this podcast is distributed everywhere it is. He comes up and he collects, because we get questions a lot from persons, not necessarily clients. Sometimes it's clients, sometimes it's not, but they log in and we answer questions live, and I'll go through whatever and I'll say it like it is. He also does a lot of other social media management. So we have a TikTok with quite a few videos.
Oh, gotcha. Nice.
We have a YouTube, and we have a whole YouTube inter-office series on there, which I think is hilarious. But and he is a meme lord, so he's really good at coming up with a bunch of those. So those are all things that, even if I were very good at them, which I don't pretend to be, I'm certainly not. I don't have the time capacity to do it, and I'm not necessarily a creative. I can be witty, but I'm sure not the creative mind. And I know that my capacity and capabilities stop at that as soon as we get to that threshold. So I made sure I have the professional involved. Also, within my marketing strategy, that doesn't mean that he handles all of the marketing, but he is in charge of managing other marketing companies with whom we work.
Sure.
So there's a little, I know how much of this I have to interplay, but he does make sure he keeps an eye on the ROIs of our investments in marketing, and he makes sure that he keeps the social media alive, because that's just fun, right? So we also get some enjoyment out of that.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson that I have here is it can't be managed by me as the owner when I still have to, step foot in courtrooms. I was in court this morning.
Yeah. And I think everything you just said there is very crucial. Delegating what you are maybe not an expert at is very important. And I think, so I'm reading, kind of like listening to this audio book called The Big Leap. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or read it before.
I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, it's very good. But one of the things that he talks about in the book, because it's all about kind of self-fulfillment and having success in your life or whatever. But one of the things that I think kind of directly applies to delegation specifically are these kind of 4 zones that people can be in. There's like the zone of incompetence, which is you're doing things you're not good at. There's your zone of competence, which is you do things that you're okay at. Then there's your zone of excellence, where you're doing things that, yes, you're good at. But then there's finally your zone of genius, where you're doing things that really only you could be doing. And in business, and I think as a law firm, especially if you really want to grow and maximize, like you said, be efficient, you should be trying to spend as much of your time solely in your zone of genius and delegate the other things to people where that's their zone of genius. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I think that's I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting, and there's a lot of other stuff in the book that's interesting. And he was telling me, Patricia was telling me that the podcast is doing very well, which is awesome. I'm very happy to hear you are doing that.
Local awards and stuff's going on.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, since that's kind of something that, I don't think I've talked to anybody else who's doing something just like that. I'd love to know if a lawyer was interested in maybe starting a podcast or doing something kind of similar. What are some tips or just some advice you would give for somebody?
Everybody. So this is kind of how I handled it. I was fortunate to find Patricio and know him through some other professionals. He was a paralegal, so he has a really great and excellent knowledge of the legal field. And he also has his own podcast, so he has a really great knowledge of how to put that together and how to facilitate it. because that's something I definitely would have had nowhere to even figure out how to start. I would have to do some pretty intensive research and, you know, figure out all the equipment I need. Again, I wouldn't do it without him. Without him, or without the kind of person who that is their, you know, their interest and their capability. I would not be able to accomplish it. And what would happen is there's times when I may know what needs to get done, but I know that what will happen to me often is I'll be like, you know, I could really spend another hour researching this case, or I will definitely get lost in the, you know, the part of the practice of law that really interested me, really being, you know, an attorney. I know I will get lost in that. I did it today, right before I came on this podcast. I'm looking at case law and I was like, oh, good, bad. And then I was like, I have this to go to. I'm like, I just would get lost in it. But Patricio came and he's like, you have this going on in 5 minutes. This is what you have to do. So I know if it were just up to me, it's again, you know, even though he works for me, he keeps me accountable to it as well. So you kind of can't depend on yourself to do it all yourself. He keeps me accountable with doing the podcast, with creating content for social media. And even this, like, he kept me accountable. He was like, and I'm like, but I have to do it. And he goes, yeah, it can wait. It's okay. I'm like, you're right. You know what? You're right. You're right. Put it down. So
yeah, no, I think that is the thing, you know, having some form of accountability to hold yourself accountable is very important for sure. And I appreciate you putting that down to be with us today. That really means a lot. So, you know, I'd love to, as we kind of wrap this up, talk a little bit more specifically what you guys are working on maybe in the future. Your goals for 2021, is it something you're looking to expand into other areas or other practice areas? What does that look like for you?
So I really have a belief on being really good at one area of law and not trying to be jack of all trades, master at none. It's not my taste preference. So what I'm working on now is I want to write and prepare a divorce guide, almost like a series of checklists and worksheets for a person going through a divorce, so they can almost contain and collect their thoughts. Because when you know, a client first comes into my office and I first begin speaking with them, their minds feel like just it feels fuzzy, right? Everything seems complicated. It seems like there's a lot to get through. It seems like, you know, there are a lot of things that they want to tell you. And when it's balanced with the extreme level of emotion that comes with a family law case, a divorce or a custody case, it's really hard for them to kind of take a deep breath and step back and collect their thoughts, because there's an incredible difference between what a therapist will do when you're working through these emotions and what a lawyer will do. And I work in the law and not in your therapy. So I want to create kind of a checklist for clients, and that this is also a way that I can service people that maybe are even outside the jurisdiction, right? Collect your thoughts when it comes to your children, when it comes to this, and give kind of just little tidbits of the real life advice that people need. Just because the law allows you to do it doesn't mean you should. So it's one of those to kind of help direct people and really be able to expand and provide our services to even individuals going through this outside of our practice area. Because I think that's something that we do that's a little bit unique, is I will tell any client the honest truth, even if it isn't in my best interest because I don't make more money on it, or, you know, it's always my goal or my expectation that I do not drag you into a courtroom and then something like the judge would never order that and I know better, right? So I want to expand my availability to people for that. And I'm hoping to do that through a little bit through our podcast and a little bit through I writing a guide to help people through something that they can actually use. They don't need to hear me blah, blah, blah in a book. They need something that they can actually like pen to paper that will assist them in getting through the process. More than just information, a way to collect their thoughts so that when they communicate with their attorney, they know where to start and they can take inventory of their emotions versus the facts.
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful idea. You know, I think, you know, kind of what you were talking about there, you know, not being a jack of all trades, kind of being specialized in maybe one thing, kind of becoming an authority figure for a certain something like that. And putting pieces of content like that out there are only going to help, because I think that's one thing when it comes to marketing that sometimes can be a misconception where, you know, attorneys think they just need to put their name everywhere. And yes, that might work, but there's so many different attorneys. You need to be able to set yourself apart, and providing that kind of valuable content in comparison to just, oh, call me and we'll help you with your case, you know, could kind of make or break somebody's decision for sure.
Right. And I think I'm not like leading with my purpose, right? Because I know my purpose is to help people and families through this and ultimately help the children who might be in crisis through this. That's a very important theory that I have in my practice. That's an internalized theory. That's a really valuable to me. I will tell clients all the time and constantly that I'm not going to take your case because you don't have a good argument. Or just recently, I had a consultation with a client who, you know, was ready to pay and invest in our services to try to modify his parenting plan. And, you know, he might have had a basis, right? You know, legally, I think I could get it past the goalie on the legal, you know, sniff test, if you will. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, with what he and his daughter essentially needed, it was my opinion as a human being. I said, attorneys entering your life in this arena for this reason with these issues aren't going to really ultimately solve your problem. Because the ultimate outcome, I don't know that it's going to, the legal outcome I can achieve is not going to resolve this underlying issue, right? That the court can't handle that. Sure. So this is the advice I want to give you. I want you to take it down this path. Focus on your daughter, not on suing your ex-wife, because that's who needs your investment, right? You invest in that manner. And I think you'll have more success ultimately in the family relationship you want to achieve. So, you know, that is the goal that I want to lead with. That is my ultimate goal in figuring this out and making sure that people are secure at the end of their divorce and figuring that out within the bounds of the law. So I think finding unique ways to be able to extend that reach and availability is something I want to develop.
Oh, for sure. And I think I think that's wonderful that you're doing it that way, because they're definitely, you know, everybody that I've interviewed so far has been wonderful and I really appreciate it. But, you know, lawyers do get a bad rap, you know, sometimes because there are just some sharky people out there who are willing to take money for anything. So I'm, you know, it's something that I'm glad you're on the other side of the fence. That's awesome. And as we wrap this up, I have one final question for you. If you could give, you know, and you've dropped a lot of value today, so I really appreciate it, Erin. What is one final thing you would share to attorneys who are maybe struggling to adapt to this kind of modern era, or just kind of, you know, struggling in general? What's one final thing you would give, one piece of advice?
Work on your policies and procedures. If you can create some things where you can, this is our policy to X, Y, and Z. If you can expand on those and how it works for you. One of the things that works for me is making sure that my calls with clients or opposing counsel are scheduled. I actually don't let my assistant take a message from a client or an opposing counsel. I have them set up a call. Because if it's take a message, send me an email, ma'am. I will respond to your email. If you just have a message, you just need to throw information at me, put it in an email. Okay, don't leave it with my receptionist. So my receptionist in general won't take a message and will say, okay, well, do you mind just sending an email to Attorney Morse? I can give you her email address. Or if you need to speak with me, I don't allow my receptionist to take the message, right? Call back so-and-so. Yeah. I won't accept a stack of those on my desk. I'm not having it. I say, set them for a time certain phone call so that I'm prepared. I pull the file, I look at the email, and we're respecting everybody's time. So that's one of the ways that I'm able to kind of keep control of my day and have enough time to do everything.
Sure.
And everyone gets responded to.
Yeah, no, that's valuable. That's awesome. I think that's something that a lot of people could probably try and simulate and have good luck, because, setting up good, proper systems and procedures is for sure, it's the backbone of your law firm. You need to be able to have those things properly set in place if you really want to succeed. So thank you so much for sharing that.
We have a 200-page book of policies and procedures. And when I find that my staff's not following it, I pull the procedure, I make a copy of it, and I hand it to my HR person, and I highlight the things that weren't followed. And I'm like, is it because you didn't read it or you forgot it?
Yeah, no, that you got to keep it up. You got to keep it up on that. And for sure. So thank you so much today, Erin. I really appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you, or maybe stay up to date with this new checklist that you're going to be putting out soon, where is the best place for them to find out about you guys?
Well, on our website, which is morse-firm.com, we do have a social media tab on there. So the best way to keep up is to keep track of our podcasts, which are also saved, and they are broadcast on all of the podcast media everywhere that Patricio knows how to find. And that includes you can actually see the videos of them, because we also put them up on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch a video and see my expressive face, or you want to listen to it in your headphones from any of the podcast streaming services that are available.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, I'll make sure to link your website in the description for both of these. So thank you so much again for being here today, Erin. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all in the next one. Have a great day.